everyone. Welcome back to Alpha Art Gallery's Meet the Artist series. My name is Giovanna Abdu, and I'm here with Lisa today, who is here as an exhibiting artist for our New Brunswick Art Salon watercolor and mixed media exhibition. Hi, Lisa. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So we're just going to jump into the questions. We are fortunate enough to have you also displaying your work in our oil, sculpture, and mixed media exhibition. Could you discuss a little bit about how your work has evolved since your last exhibition at Alpha Art Gallery? Are there any notable similarities or differences compared to your previous work?
The pieces that are in the next exhibit are literally what has evolved directly from the ones, because I've been working as an artist for decades and the work is constantly evolving. But this series has evolved directly from those. So the weavings that I was doing, I started them probably 30 years ago. And it started from the idea that I love to work in different media, and every media has its own personality. And to me, drawing was always quiet. She's like the friend that you talk to, when you're having a problem. But I don't really like realism. I love the process. I love, keeping my skills up. I love to do a drawing, but when it's done, it always is like, okay, it's, drawing. So I started experimenting with weaving them together and combining different elements and showing different perspectives of, like, if I was drawing a vase of flowers or whatever, showing it from different perspectives and then weaving them together. So I always, part of that process was to paint or draw on top of the weaving at the end to tie it together at the very end. So it was kind of natural to collage on top of it too. And little by little, the collaging became the more important thing. And in the last year or so, I kind of moved more towards just collaging. Every once in a while, there's a little weaving in it, but collaging where the focus is more on the paper, the handmade paper, than it is on weaving separate things together. Still combines different elements, different medium from the earth.
Fantastic. Thank you for your response. I think we feel very honored that we get to see your work sort of evolve throughout that. And like you mentioned, you are primarily focused on using paper now. You also use watercolor, red rock, ink, and thread. Could you describe your artistic process when you are working with mixed medium?
So this series, this is a very small part that's going to be in your exhibition of probably a couple hundred pieces that are mostly inspired by hikes through the Red Rocks in the American Southwest, the Pacific Northwest, through Oregon and through Western Canada. So the ones that are inspired by Western Canada and Oregon are more like blues and violets, and the ones in the Southwest are more the reds and oranges. And what was fascinating to me about all of it is just, especially driving through Western Canada, is it's a very simple landscape. It's sky, mountain, pine trees. But every second is like a frame of film changes the composition and the colors change slightly. And the first time I drove through it, I was looking out the window like a puppy, taking like thousands of pictures because every single second the composition changed. But it was still so simple and so beautiful. And that's what I wanted to capture. And I wanted to capture it as simply as possible. So the idea of using things that are so organic to begin with, like handmade paper that's recycled from other projects, or actual sand from the Red Rocks, watercolor, which uses so much water to create watercolors is much more random than other forms of paint because the water has its own way of moving, just with a natural way of capturing that idea of just the simple beauty of the earth.
Yeah, so sort of still along that line of capturing the beauty of the earth, your work also emphasizes connections to energy and to nature. Why do you think it's important to highlight these themes, and how do you believe your work achieves this?
Well, this pretty much the foundation of my whole life from the time I was a kid. I remember having this thought for the first time when I was pretty little, really too young to even put it into words. But I remember trying to talk to my dad about it, saying, I look at people and I have the feeling they're me. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And as I've gotten older, I realize it's what a lot of us believe, that the purpose of our being here, we don't really understand it, but it has something to do with our connection to each other. So it's literally the foundation of every single interaction, everything I do. It's not just art, it's the whole way I live my life. So it has always come out in my art from the very beginning that that sense that we're connected is the most important thing, and connected to the earth, and all the elements of the earth are connected. And I think it is achieved simply by just honoring the earth, but also the medium that I use, the way that the weavings, that was kind of a metaphor for taking things and putting them together. And they don't always work together the first time you put them together. Sometimes they need a little help, but that really is the point of all of it.
Thank you for that beautiful answer. I think kind of highlighting our connection both to nature can also help us connect with others that are around us, and it's art that kind of serves as the baseline for that connection. So I really resonated with your answer. Thank you for your answer. I want to go a little bit more into the art itself. You create a dotted perimeter using thread along the mountains and the trees in your artwork. Beyond showcasing specific elements, I find that this technique also highlights the layering of different materials that you use. Could you elaborate on how you use dotted perimeters and layering in general just to create your artwork?
So in collages, this is really new. But I always did pen and ink drawings where that's kind of that's how you draw with pen and ink when you're using one color. That's a big part of the way that you create light and shadow is by using the little stippling technique. The very first time I made one of these pure weavings, that it was much more abstract than the ones that I sent into this exhibit. But it definitely looks like mountains when I was done. I had a weaving and I collaged on it so much that it became more collage than a weaving. And in that first piece, I added the dots because I didn't want a sharp line, but line is one of the basic elements of art. But a solid line, not a sharp line, a solid line is harsher than a dotted line. And I just did it for no other reason than it looks good. The amount of people that have commented on it, and now it has also evolved into, I use it now not as just a dotted line making an edge, but in a lot of the pieces I've done recently, it actually blends. I use it more like the way I would in a pen and ink drawing. So I think there may be a piece or one of the pieces that is in this exhibit that's like that, where the sky is kind of blended with the dotted. It's not just a dotted line, but everybody comments on it. And another reason I did it was the very first piece I did. I wasn't trying to fool anyone, but it looks like fabric. And the dotted lines, everyone thought was thread. It's not thread, it's ink.
Wow, that is certainly, I didn't know it was.
Yeah, been in exhibits where people are like, wow, you sewed this? I'm like, it's
Yes.
ink. There's dots of ink.
Yeah, I think people comment on it because it is very eye-catching, and I think it is a very fresh approach to mixed media that I personally haven't seen before. So thank you for providing some insight into your
Looks cool.
process. And then just continuing on your use of materials and techniques, can you incorporate how you utilize texture if you do use texture within your landscapes?
Oh, there's so much texture because the paper has well, first of all, a lot of the medium has texture. The enamel paint has a different texture than the watercolor, so that's why I like to use both. The sand, when I use the sand, has so much texture. But my favorite thing about the paper, because this is sort of a metaphor for what I was just saying about how we're all connected. At the end of every day, I collect all the scraps that I'm working with and sometimes separate them out by color so I don't just end up with a bunch of beige. And then I soak the paper and recycle it overnight into new sheets. One of the things I love about that is a little bit of the control is out of my hands. And I always find that with the best art, like an artist needs to go in having a message, having something to say. But it's like any other conversation, there's another side to it, and the medium is the other side. And in this case, the paper takes on a life of its own. It's going to come out the texture that it wants to come out, depending on what I've used, comes out the color, depending, I'm not really controlling that. So every day that I make I usually make one new piece of paper every morning from the leftover from the night before. And it's always like a little surprise what it's going to look like, what the texture is going to be. And then just working with the different textured papers to create that feeling of the earth having so many different textures. It's really fun.
Yeah, I mean, and just like we can't control the texture of the nature around us, I think to an extent you also can't control what each texture will be each day as well. And then also, just besides being an artist, you are also a teacher. Has teaching influenced how you view or practice your art in any significant ways?
It actually, I would say, was the other way around. I became a teacher. I love kids and I love art. So years ago, after I graduated from college, I went to the Art Students League in New York City for a while. And the more that my art evolved, the more I realized people really only most people, I should say, only really resonated with realism. They were like, "Ah, oh, that's so good." And I remember my first college professor saying this, that people are always going to go back to that because that's what most people understand. But my work was getting so, it was so exciting to me, and it was, I was meeting other artists who were so excited, and there was so much more than realism. And one day I was like, I just need to go out and share this with kids. I'm going to become a teacher because it isn't the way that we're taught now. It wasn't at the time. It has evolved so much in the last 30 years. But at the time when I was little, art was, we made, you know, pumpkins and turkeys. And I'm like, I'm going to teach art, not just crafty things.
That is fantastic. And I just want to ask you, before we let you go, is there anything else that you would like to share with us just about you or your artwork?
I feel like between the two exhibits I did, I mean, the two interviews I've done with you now, I kind of covered most of it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being here with us
Awesome.
today.
Thanks for having me.
We can't wait to see your artwork at our upcoming watercolor and mixed media exhibition, which will be on view November 5th, 2024 into January 11th, 2025. Thank you again and have a great rest of your day.
You too.